Hi guys and welcome to my FIFA 19 career mode wish list. Now before we get into this, bear in mind that a lot of these things you've probably heard before because there are a lot of wish lists out there, but again, we're all on the same team here. We all want the best for the next career mode. We always have done, although EA tend to favour Ultimate Team, so we're just here making wish lists and just screaming for some form of attention from EA. So I've written up a list, guys, with plenty of ideas. Some you may have heard of before, some you might not have heard of before, and it'd also be very interesting to see what you guys think, what ideas you guys have for FIFA 19 career mode as well. A lot of these ideas I do have, they kind of interlink as well, so it might end up coming across a little bit messy because I've done it in no particular order. Some might end up attaching to an idea I've said about 5 ideas before, but we'll get into it now anyway, guys. So the first thing on the list is probably my biggest bugbear in FIFA career mode in general, and that is the badges and kits of the teams. So if you're doing a road to glory, say for example with Portsmouth, you get them into the Champions League, into the Premier League and what have you, and they still have their League 2 badge. It is so irritating, and it's such a simple change as well, EA. Come on, man. And going with that is the changing of kits. It doesn't have to be anything massively dramatic, maybe just a change in sponsor every season or a slight change in kits. For example, with Sunderland, they have the red and white stripes. They might just be able to add, like a black stripey there or just a slightly different pattern. I mean, they do it with pro clubs, so I don't see why they couldn't sort of get that into career mode as well, and then they can do the same for the rest of the teams across Europe or across the world. Every single team, even if it is just the most minor of changes, just to keep things fresh, because you're playing the same teams with the same kits for a good 15 years. Now, next on the list is revamping the potential system. Now, the reason I say this is because every single career mode, within a month or so of playing the game, you get the gist of who has the highest potential, who is the biggest hotshot in the game, and everyone's career mode is exactly the same. And there's plenty of websites out there within like a week of the new FIFA being out that will allow you to just go through every single player, find the best potential players, and then you can just fill your team with these bargains who are eventually going to be 90 or 91, 92 plus rated. But if it's completely random every single time, or maybe just base their potential on their form, even if you get someone who is 25 years of age and is rated 75, if they're a striker and they've gone through a couple of seasons of banging 30 plus goals, then their rating should go up quite dramatically. So maybe if they just base it all on form rather than it's just drilled and ingrained in the game that this player who's 19 years of age, who's now rated 71, regardless of how he plays, within 4 or 5 seasons he's going to be rated 90, because it doesn't really make sense. That isn't how the world works. So with it being based purely on form or just randomizing it every time a little bit, you'll get a unique experience every time you play a new career mode, and it won't go stale. And next on the list is one that I've been screaming out for years, and I know that this one has been suggested on a lot of other wish lists, and that is a create a club mode. I just think that would be absolutely insane. It'd give people like me, content creators, a lot more content to create, and it's very different every single time. You could create your own club. You could either probably select from a pool of players to create your original squad, or maybe sort of like a draft like they do in Football Manager. If you're starting in League 2, you might only get given, say, 10 million or 15 million, and then you can just select your squad from there. Or obviously if you plan on starting the Premier League, you might be given 60 or 70 million. I don't know. Or you could even just set it as a challenge. There might be a difficulty for it. So you could create your club, you create your badge, you create your kit and what have you. And then you could say, are the board going to be rich? Are they going to be like medium or stingy, poor, whatever. So you could either start off in League 2 and have the option to maybe start with 100 million just to have some fun. Or if you really wanted a challenge, you could set it to your board or chairman being poor, and then maybe have a tiny amount to play with, and then really struggling and just feeling the challenge of building up a new club. Now, linking with that is a stadium creator, or even just more fake stadiums. And there's a lot of things that will go and interlink with this point. Obviously, we want more stadiums anyway, more real stadiums. But if not, just more fake stadiums, because when you're doing a road to glory, especially in England, starting from League 2, you're playing in the same stadium almost every single game. I'm sick to death of Moulton Road. So obviously, if you were creating a club, you'd be able to create a stadium, even if it's just the absolute basics of a stadium. Just you want 2 tiers on this side, 1 tier on this side, and the more money you generate through ticket sales and merchandise and stuff like that, which would make those finances a lot more relevant, you could maybe put them towards a stadium revamp. Because taking someone from League 2 all the way to the Champions League and you still got a 5,000 capacity stadium, it's just so unrealistic and it's pathetic, really. Something should have been done about that. Or to make it even more interesting, what you could probably do, say for example you did take Portsmouth from League 2, or anyone else really, anyone from League 2, and you're taking them through the years, that taking them up the leagues, maybe what you could do is have a goal at the beginning of each season from the board, like they do set you targets. If they maybe say you achieve 80% capacity for the entire season, then at the end of the season we will add a new tier, or we'll add a new stand, or we'll just improve on the stadium in general, and you can see that in game. So that would make you want to drive to play well even more and take the challenges more seriously and the targets more seriously. So obviously the more you play well, the more you win in games, the stadium is going to be a lot more full. Obviously if you're lingering at the bottom of the league, you can have barely anyone there, so obviously the board are going to think, well, you don't need a big enough stadium because you're not filling it. But if you are filling it week in, week out, and you do eventually get to the Champions League, being in a 5,000 capacity stadium, like I've said, it's just ridiculous. So some form of customisation on the stadiums would be great. Next up, a small one, but a very easy one which could be implemented from FIFA and EA, is player interaction. I'm sure you can all relate to this, how annoying it is when you're constantly getting messages from players, why don't you play me? I wanted to start the last game, this, that and the other, and you have no opportunity to respond to them. It might be a high potential player who you're just training up, but they're not quite ready for your first team yet. But just to be able to tell them that, even if they don't take it very well, and they still say, well, no, I still want to play, at least you've tried. At least it gives you the option to do that. That is what I would want to see. They might take it well, they might raise the morale if you let them know, you are in my plans, but just not yet. I don't think you're ready yet. Then it might raise the morale a bit, rather than them sitting in the reserves wondering why aren't I getting played, and their morale is going low and low and low and lower. And then eventually they'll hand in a transfer request and it's just absolutely pointless. And tying in with that, with youth players, I would like to see some form of youth league. It doesn't need to be massively in depth, but when you do have players in reserves or high potential players and they do constantly want game time, or even players who aren't necessarily really young but you're not playing them too much at the time, if you stick them in your reserves, that might class as your sort of youth team or a reserve team, and you can stick them there and there will be a little mini league. You can maybe watch them play or just see the results come in. You could see the league table, you could see how many goals this person has scored in this league, and then that might make you think, well, they're in good form, let's promote them to the first team. And it kind of cancels out the whole complaining from players as well, who are constantly saying, I want to play, I want to play, I want to play. So then you can give them some game time, and it gives you the opportunity to give them game time as well. And then that'll obviously give players who are in dire need of game time and match experience, it'll give them that in the reserve league or a youth league. So that is something that I think would be a massive help, and it would be a fantastic thing to put in to a career mode. Now, I would also like to see more in-depth press conferences, because the ones we've got now are just absolutely pointless. They affect nothing. I don't think I've actually took part in one of those stupid little press conferences in about 3 years in FIFA, because I know it affects nothing at all. And the way the Journey have done it, even though the animations and the voice acting is the most cringy thing I've ever seen. Maybe if you just did it as sort of a speech bubble, it didn't even necessarily need to be voice acted or anything like that, but to just have your manager sat in the press conference, you're getting fired questions at you, and maybe the way you act and the answers you give affect the morale of your players. So for example, it might be a post-match press conference and you've just got beat 3-0 in a really important game in the league or something like that, or in a cup or whatever. You could maybe slate the players in that post-match press conference, and that could maybe fire them up, and it could boost the morale to really, fight back and show what they can do, or it could deplete the morale. Just to give it something. The press conference is a massive thing for managers in real life, yet they mean nothing in what we've got right now. So just to do something like that, I think would be great. And on topic of the actual manager itself, I'd like to see a lot more customization with that as well. I mean, you can create a player already, so why can't you create a manager? Because right now we only have 6 or 7 presets to choose from, and it's just getting really boring, and you're seeing the same managers all the time. You know, when the ones that don't have real faces or real bodies and stuff like that, you're seeing the same ones. So even if you just get a ton of presets, but at least let us customize our own manager. Next up is different tactics for different teams. So obviously we see in real life there's a lot of teams that park the bus, especially in the Premier League, or depending who they're playing. If there's a lower league team in the Premier League taking on Man City, to be fair, 95% of the teams in the league, in the Premier League this year, they've parked the bus against City. So maybe depending who they're playing, depending how they're doing in the league, it would reflect in their tactics. Because at the moment, every team is set for their default formation, their default tactics, and they play the same way over and over again. They should be able to change. You shouldn't be able to play the same team twice with them doing the exact same formation or the exact same tactics. Granted, that happens sometimes, but in this day and age, managers constantly change the formation. They constantly change the way they play. It should change constantly, I think. So just a small variation in tactics there. It shouldn't be too hard again, surely, EA. Now, something else that I think we might have been able to do in the past, I can't quite remember, but being able to request more funds. So, for example, it's quite easy to run out of funds, especially if you're a lower league team. You don't have the best of teams in general. You might be doing really well with this poor kind of team that you've got. You might be top of the league, and you'll want to keep going. You want to improve your squad and stay and solidify that place you've got at the top of the league. So by January, you might be top of the league, but you've come to the transfer window, you've got no money because you've already spent the 500k that you were given at the beginning of the season on 2 or 1 incredibly average player. So you might just want a couple of million, maybe to renew some contracts, or even just to buy a couple of half-decent players, because you do lose out quite a lot, especially like, for example, right now, I'm doing a Blackpool series where every single player, or the majority of the players in the Blackpool team, they only have 1 or 2 year contracts. So with the funds being so low already, as soon as it hits January, almost my entire team are getting signed on pre-contracts, and the next season I'm going to be absolutely screwed. You should be able to just request, even if they say no, just give them the option to ask, even if they only give you an extra 200k, or if you're a bigger team, they might give you 20 million or something like that. I think that would be quite nice as well. Also, I would like to see the Champions League. The Champions Cup, it's just awful and cringy to see. I just don't like it whatsoever. I know there's the whole thing with licensing. Right now, PES has the license to Champions League. I don't know whether both of them can have it at the same time. I don't know how it works. I'm not going to pretend like I do. But from looking it up, it looks like possibly, it's just a rumour, that the Champions League license, it finishes with PES at the end of this year. Whether they're going to renew it, I don't know, but it'd be nice to see EA take over that as well. We already have nice animations for different leagues and different competitions. The Champions League is the biggest one yet. It's called the Champions Cup, and it just looks dodgy. And next on the list is more real player faces. There's nothing more off-putting when you find someone, especially if they have loads of potential. You think, oh yeah, their stats look fantastic, they're going to grow into a superstar, and then you look at them and you see the real player face. It looks nothing like the real person. Their hair is bright blonde and it's an afro when it's not like that in real life, and it's just appalling. It really puts me off from buying certain players if they look that bad. It doesn't necessarily have to be the real player face for everyone, but at least have it, for championship teams, for bigger players in other of the top 5 European leagues, or at least just give a bit more variation in the sort of fake player faces as well, because sometimes you're playing an 11 and every single player looks exactly the same. So just a bit more variation and a few more real player faces would be nice, yeah. Thank you. And another thing is match schedules. I think at times, particularly if you're still in with a chance in every single competition, you've got the FA Cup, you've got the Champions League, you might still be in the League Cup, and you've got the league as well. At times, you're playing, 8 games in 2 weeks, and the fitness levels on your players, it depends how you are really, because with me, I only like to play players who are at least sort of 95% fit. It's just a thing, a bit of OCD. I'd never use a player who isn't almost 100% fit. Or if they don't sort out the match schedule, and at least sort out the fitness bars, because I think they go down so easily, and having to rotate your players for every single game, you basically need 22 first team players for it to work, because as soon as you get to that January phase, you're still doing well in all the competitions, you're rotating constantly because everyone is so unfit. So maybe even give the option to request a match to be rescheduled or something like that, because it's a joke at times that you can't manage it. The opposition, they have a fully fit squad. You can see that their stamina bar is completely full from the off, and you've got this depleted side who are playing every other day basically. So just maybe a readjustment on the match scheduling, because it can get pretty ridiculous. Now to international management, something that I haven't really cared for at all since it was introduced. And I think the reason I don't really care for it is because of how easy it is to get into it. So you can start with League 2, you might have a half decent season, and about halfway through, you're already getting offers from England, Brazil, Argentina, Germany, Portugal, Spain, and you're thinking, how easy and unrealistic is this? It almost becomes a burden. It's bin fodder. The second it gets into my emails, I delete it immediately and just completely ignore it, because it's just unrealistic and it just becomes daft. And I think it should also give you the option, I'm not too sure whether it does, but it should give the option to just be able to manage the international team, because it's very rare nowadays that you do see a manager manage a club and a country. It has happened in the past, but it doesn't really happen very often. And then maybe if you are just managing the international side and not a club, it could give you the option to possibly watch a player that you're looking at. Maybe a player who hasn't been in the team yet and you want to go and watch that game just to see how they play. Things like that, just to make it a bit more interesting, the international scene, because right now it's just dire, I think. Now the last thing on the list is training. Now at the minute you get 5 slots to train your players. If you want to truly train up a player or several players, 5 slots isn't enough, because I usually use at least 2 or 3 slots for one player if I really want to build them up and quickly. And then you've got 2 spots that you're no doubt going to use on one other player. You might have 5 or 6 or 7 high potential players that are missing out, and you're constantly having to rotate. So I thought of a kind of solution to this. I'm not necessarily asking for 20 training slots, but what you could do to make it a bit more challenging as well is having the option to upgrade training facilities. And the better they are, the more training slots you get. So for example, Manchester United, they will probably have the best training facilities available, so that maybe they get 10 slots. If obviously you're taking over a team in League 2, they might only have 3 or 4 or something like that. So that will give you a reason to build up your finances as well, rather than wasting it away, every penny you've got on players. It just gives you a lot more to think about. I think that'd be quite a good way to do the training system as well. So I think that pretty much covers everything, guys. No doubt the second I stop recording, I'll probably think of another idea and want to start recording again, but that's not going to happen. So if you agree with these ideas, guys, please let me know. If you disagree, let me know as well. Comment below and tell me some of your ideas. It's always very, very interesting to hear career mode ideas, even though half the time they're ignored by EA. But it's enjoyable to see these ideas nevertheless. So if you did enjoy the video, guys, please hit that like button, subscribe and all that nonsense, and I shall see you soon.